most of you know me by Emery and Rich, but I also write romance under Emmy's Madrigal, and so I'm going to read. It is horror though, but it's romance horror. So I'm going to be reading from Northanger, which is, as you can see, I just have the proof, coming in November, and very excited about it. Anybody read Jane Austen? Yay! Okay. Anybody love Northanger Abbey? Yay! One. That's awesome, though, because Northanger is very misunderstood, I think. What I see it as is a book about a horror addict. I mean, she loves horror stuff. She reads horror books. She, imagines when everybody says, oh, I went to London or whatever, she imagines like a train robbers and, no, not train. Too early for trains, but carriage robbers and things like that. So I decided, it's my favorite book of Jane Austen's, and I decided to rewrite it in modern day. So just imagine, for those of you who don't know Jane Austen at all, just imagine if Lydia from Beetlejuice was like plopped into a Gossip Girl episode, and like she'd have to deal with those people. And what if her new boyfriend's dad was a suspected murderer? I'm going to read first a little bit of what Jane wrote, Jane Austen. This is her intro to this particular scene where Catherine, my girl is named Cat, because of her cat eyes, she is friends with this lady who her father is suspected to be a murderer. So she's really interested in it. She's like, ooh, I'm going to catch him. I don't know what it's like, but I want to see her mom's room, right? So the daughter tries to take her to the room, and she gets caught by the dad. Again she passed through the folding doors. Again her hand was upon the important lock, and Catherine, hardly able to breathe, was turning to close the former with fearful caution, when the figure, the dreaded figure of the general himself at the further end of the gallery, stood before her, and the name Eleanor, at the same moment in his loudest tone, resounded through the building, giving to his daughter the first intimation of concealment of his presence, and to Catherine terror upon terror. An attempt at concealment had been her first instinctive movement on perceiving him, yet she could scarcely hope to have escaped his eye. And when her friend, who was with an apologizing look, darted hastily by her, had joined and disappeared with him, she ran for the safety of her own room, and locking herself in, she believed that she should never have the courage to go down again. So that was Jane's scene. And this is what happens in modern day. Promising Cat a surprise, Ellen led her outside and along the porch, which to the right side of the lodge branched off into the woods. Where are we going? Cat asked. She wasn't really scared, but going into the woods alone at night did excite her horror movie watcher alert. The old house is being redone, but I think we can sneak in while no one's there. I get to see the old Northanger house? Yes. Ellen's eyes lit up. I can't wait to show you my mother's old room. Stopping at the front door, Ellen stuck the key in and turned. The scent of construction dust and new paint wafted out. Plastic hung in the doorway to the right, swayed like the cloak of a wraith as Ellen shut the front door. In front of them, a darkened stairway led upstairs. Ellen fumbled for the light switch, but before she could turn the switch on, a deep voice called her name. Ellen! A dim light switched on, and a dark form appeared in the partially lit doorway. Father? She moved to stand in front of Cat. What are you doing here? Mr. Tilney's voice held venom and anger. I wanted to show Cat the old house. Mr. Tilney's form was even more domineering in the partial light of the half-obscured room than it was in the light of day. Cat could make him out: a dim lamp, an unlit fireplace, an elaborate vase on the mantel, and above, a large painting of a woman. Cat was brought to mind horror stories where paintings come alive, but Mr. Tilney was very real, solid, and standing right in front of her, his dark brow scowling at them both. In that demeanor, Cat could very easily believe he murdered his wife. The urge to run was only superseded by the wish to protect Ellen from her father's fury. Would he harm someone outside the family, or was his wrath only directed at those connected by name? I thought I made it quite clear that this house is off limits. But I just wanted to... No! Work isn't done. It's dusty and dangerous. I won't have you getting hurt. Besides, Miss Moreland will be our guest at the opening. And until then... Mr. Tilney stepped toward them. The hard angles of his face curved deep in the dim light. It's not fit to be seen. He growled the words like a dime novel villain, and Cat was immediately reminded of Mr. Rochester and Jane Eyre. He'd locked up his wife in the attic. Perhaps Mr. Tilney had done much worse. Ellen sagged back toward the door. Cat squeezed her hand for support. Ellen, key! She placed the key in his outstretched hand and scooted Cat to the door. In the moonlight from outside, Cat studied Mr. Tilney's cold glare. He hadn't softened his gaze for her as usual. She'd finally seen his full fury firsthand, and every rumor echoed back in her ears. He turned, going back into the room with the fireplace. Cat kept watching, but he switched off the light. The house plunged into darkness. Cat! Ellen called her name. As they walked back down the bridge to the lodge, Ellen sniffled. I'm sorry, Cat. Oh, Ellen, it's okay. Cat hugged her, hoping she could make her feel not so embarrassed by the exchange. I'm sorry you got in trouble because of me. No, it wasn't your fault. It's mine entirely. Father hides his grief much of the time, but I should have known he'd say goodbye to Mother before he left town. Say goodbye to her? Wasn't she dead? But where? The urn on the mantel. That's it. Nathaniel, it's coming! I'm so excited. So thank you so much for joining us here. And if you haven't been around, please be around. There's lots of freebies on the tables, and talk to the authors. And I'm sure they'd love to hear your thoughts on their readings. Thank you.